Hello, friends. This is Matt, and this is Something from Everything, a podcast about embracing meaning and discovering wisdom through telling better stories. And this story, I'm not entirely sure how this story will age. You see, I'm recording this in late January 2022, and it really does seem like we are at a crossroads. We're seeing so many COVID cases tear through our schools, through workplaces, through hospitals. And we all know someone who is sick right now, or we are sick ourselves. And with all of those cases, there are a lot of opinions, some educated, some not, as always, about whether this is the beginning of the end of this pandemic or just the latest in a long line of seemingly unending waves. It's a lot of uncertainty after 2 solid years of uncertainty. And that uncertainty leaves a lot of our hopes on hold for the moment. So this is a post about those specific hopes, our specific dreams and longings, and the reality of how fragile they can be and how foundational they are to us right now. This one is entitled Bracing for Impact. I hope you enjoy it. In the old world, the winter months were littered with parties. Not huge, extravagant affairs, mind you, more get-together than event, but raucous, chaotic, life-affirming get-togethers. As the evenings grew colder and darker, we welcomed our friends indoors to share appetizers and craft brews, make a few pizzas, and gather round our long farm table. There were no caterers or bartenders but ourselves, no band but the playlist on the living room stereo, and no venue but our own sweet home. And we loved it. We might have a single family over, or even as many as 6. Children were ushered downstairs, except for the youngest hanging off hips, or those darting between adults to load plates with food, or excitedly interrupting adult conversation for whatever was on their mind in that precise moment. The adults would gather in small clusters, talking above the music, huddled around the couch, fireplace, or bay window ledge, and drifting in and out of the kitchen. And invariably, because that's where the food was, this is where I could be found, taking orders for pizzas and basking in the warmth of the oven and friendship alike. And then we'd sit down at that long, worn table and talk for hours. Sometimes the conversation centered around a question, subject, or quote. Other times there was no form at all. Sometimes the room was filled with laughter, and at other times a moment would arise so fraught or fragile that you held your breath. Those evenings were a lot of things. Ordinary and extraordinary, chaotic and cathartic. But mostly, it was just being surrounded by some of those that I know and love the best. And I miss it terribly. When I think about the old world, I think about those nights and that space. Sure, I miss traveling and concerts and not having my glasses fog up every time I walk indoors while wearing a mask, but mostly, I miss those celebrations. Last October, my wife suggested that we should plan another party. A celebration for no reason other than the fact that we could have one. But I was wary the moment she suggested it. It felt like a relic of the old world, too much to hope for. But I couldn't exactly say why. For a moment, it seemed life was returning to some sense of normality. Plans and trips and events could be entertained once again, viral cases were down, vaccinations had been freely available for some time, and the term Omicron had little relevance to me or anyone that I knew. But that's not the case now, is it? Now, whatever wave we are currently facing, and honestly I have lost track, is crashing down around us. It has already hit many of us, and the rest of us are bracing for impact. And that's where I am. I am bracing for impact. I brace for impact before every single shift at the hospital, where the workload swells amidst continual staff shortages, where the number of confirmed infections who need treatment keep rising, and where testing delays, higher transmissibility, and inadequate space make it more and more difficult to adequately protect myself and others. I brace for impact as I read yet another article online telling us to throw away our cloth masks and highlight the need for N95 particulate respirators. I read this well knowing that those masks should be fit tested, are impossible to find in stores right now, and that some people still don't seem to understand that any mask is ineffective if it does not cover your nose. It's been 2 years. We can figure this out. I brace for impact each day that I send my kids to school. As they tell me about another friend who has been sick for the past week, as they struggle to follow new rules and regulations that make it more difficult to hang out with their friends, as they tell me about new desk configurations, increased sanitization schedules, how bell times are now staggered, or how they now eat their lunch in their classroom only. I brace myself as I send them with those same cloth masks that I should be throwing away, but I am waiting on replacements for. I send them knowing that they need their teachers, knowing that they need their friends, knowing that they have been flexible and resilient for 2 years, but it has come with a very high cost. I know that many concerned, intelligent, informed minds are working on these laudable and imperfect solutions, and I am nearly certain that none of it will be enough. I sit my family down. I tell them to brace for impact too. I tell them that it is likely that someone in our family will probably get sick in the next few weeks, that it will likely be this new variant of COVID, this virus that we have tried for so long and so hard to avoid, and that it will be okay. That the wave that is crashing around us will likely soak us and maybe even knock us over, but it will not drag us away. I also, reluctantly, tell them that this might be the beginning of the end of this pandemic. There is a lot of guarded hope being offered lately. Hope that the widespread transmission, milder symptoms, and asymptomatic infections might finally lead to some significant herd or group immunity. Hope for antibodies that might neutralize the effects of each new variant. Hope for the pandemic becoming endemic. Hope for the lessening of restrictions. Hope for some return to normality. But all of this is future hope. And I have braced myself against future hope from the beginning. From the very beginning of this pandemic, there has been plenty of unchecked optimism and fantasies about the near future. I've certainly caught myself talking about the end of the pandemic more than once, long before this, without the first clue or critical thought about how we might actually get there. But even now, with a roadmap and compelling reasons to hope for the end, I find myself reluctant to embrace any specific and longed-for hope. I find myself wary of making another plan that comes undone at the last moment. This pandemic has made many of us both weary and wary. I find myself bracing against hope. Now, hope can seem a dangerous thing when we've felt the disappointment of its disappearance again and again, as we have in these last 2 years. And hope in a particular outcome is invariably the most fragile. Who could blame any of us for feeling nervous, skeptical, or cynical? There are so many ways our particular hopes and dreams and plans have had to be adjusted, revised, or abandoned altogether over the past 2 years. It makes sense that we might want to keep hope at a bit of a distance. At least for now. But we need our hopes. We need those specific hopes, longings, and desires that pull us forward because they give us strength to put one foot in front of the other on days like these. Our hopes are undoubtedly risky, but we need them. Our specific hopes for that reunion, that trip, that surgery to be rescheduled, that table to be filled with friends, food, and conversation once again. If this is the storm before the calm, then we will brace ourselves for it and endure it by knowing what specifically we are hoping for. And so, reluctantly, and with trepidation, I am getting my menu ready. I'm picking out the music playlist. I am cleaning out the downstairs entertainment room. I am thinking of how best to set up the patio when the weather warms. Because one day, it's not today, but hopefully soon, that particular hope will be possible again. And there will be such a party. Thanks, friends. Well, friends, that is it. That is the latest episode of the Something from Everything podcast, Bracing for Impact. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, if you like this channel, you can check out my podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, whatever you happen to listen to. You can also check out my website, somethingfromeverything.com, where I have the full written post and audio recordings. And of course, if you're watching on YouTube here, hit the bell or subscribe or like, whatever new thing YouTube's invented, to have my content come to you. Thanks a lot and be well.